right, welcome everyone. It's been a little bit since we've had the last episode, but we've had a nice big break between what did they say? Between drinks, and yeah, we've got he jumped in, but we have a new guest and a great person. Every time you talk to him, it seems like he's genuinely excited to talk to you and is really interested. You know him as host of Wild World of Warhammer. He's led like 15 different podcasts. I'm sure it's 15. You know, you can tell me two, but no, it's at least 15. Mr. Sam Lemin, how you going, mate?
Good, thank you, Simon. How are you, man?
Very good. Yeah, so it's between drinks, is that right?
Yeah, it's like the cricket term, right? It's like the cricket term, is my understanding, or old Australian slang sporting term. I'm pretty sure it originates from cricket, but I could be wrong.
It's because they run around so much, they need drinks.
I guess so. Like, you know how in cricket they have like generally tea breaks and like drinks breaks and stuff like that after a certain number of overs. I'm guessing. I don't know all the old slang and lingo as to why that originates from. I should, but I don't.
Imagine if they had like tea breaks, like in the NFL. Like, I know you're going to talk about it today, but it's like, all right, boys, we're going to have a cup of tea.
Yeah, very manly, right? Very manly.
That's right. Everyone's just taking head knocks and a bunch of concussions, and you just sit around tea and crumpets.
Absolutely.
I like that. I reckon they should introduce it. Call the NFL. Just say, it's like, you know what, guys? This is what we're going to have. Tea and crumpets, all of you.
That's it. If they really also want to secede from the British as well, they could have like iced tea, like, you know, the American, like the Lipton iced tea. That's very popular in the States as like sweet or unsweet tea.
Yeah, it would have to be the Southern style, yeah.
That's it. The Southern style tea, and then look, they can figure out something. They can have chicken waffles as well. There you go. Have some along the side there, or biscuits, the savoury biscuits per se, which for viewers or listeners, I should say, biscuits in the American term can mean a multitude of things. It's actually like a breakfast item. It's very scone.
It's very close to scones, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the funniest thing. You go to Popeyes, which is a chicken brand over there, and you go chicken and biscuits, and yeah, you get a scone, and it's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, exactly. Popeyes is the KFC equivalent. It's like Louisiana style kitchen. So it's like Louisiana, southern USA, where Creole food and stuff like that is New Orleans, and it's southern hospitality, southern fried chicken. So good old KFC stuff.
And see, Sam, this is what you get on my podcast as opposed to your podcast, which is, even though we have a run sheet, I immediately, like 2 seconds in, just throw it out the bin and we start talking about KFC and tea and crumpets in the NFL.
That's all good. All the listeners are already, they're tuned in more. We've gotten more now, but surely, right? Like, it's fine. They'll listen to the 40k stuff along the way.
That's exactly. Well, but this is what I was saying. Because when we first started all this type of stuff, it's like anyone who listens to this, they're usually, well, most of them are Aussie, and we do have a bunch of international listeners, and hello to all of you. But the people who are really listening to this, it's because we want to cover the Australian scene. Like, we have very high level 40k players, right? World Championship level, and most of us know us as those strange people down south, you know. And we've got the weird meta, and we're not actually playing 40k, etc. And so it's why you do your podcast as well, and I think, and I know it's why Ben, for example, he does his with the Down to 40k guys. There's a whole host of characters down here, and for the people who are down here, they're really interested in knowing more about their local players. Like Art of War, they do great stuff, but they're very American-centric in essence. And, I know Solly and now Alex is kind of part of that, but you have to have a niche in essence. And we're a niche upon a niche, which is we are a 40k club in Queensland that talks about 40k, but more kind of evergreen topics and, psychology and painting and a whole bunch of other things that are tangentially aligned to 40k. Just that's the thing that we seem to have dedicated our life to.
Absolutely. And we learned some life lessons along the way as well, like the difference between scones and biscuits. So there we go. Maybe after this we can look up where the hell the term between drinks came from. So yeah, I think it's important, like learning about those evergreen topics, and then also being able to highlight your local heroes. So I know the lads at Contact Lost, they've gone a bit more global now, but that them being able to highlight some of their Polish people, like people you hear about from side to side, like Skark and Myson and all those names you hear as like one short nickname. You hear about them maybe at a WTC or an ETC level, but you didn't know who the person was behind it because there's no coverage there. But now it's been great to get some more coverage there for them. And I know there's a bunch of other niche podcasts. So I know Team England, actually, funny enough, just started their own, and they had episode 1 just come out. So hearing from Chris Kinnear and Chewy, is it Tony? Tony Chew. People I've heard of but I've never met in person. And yeah, and I know there's a bunch of them coming up, which is always great. And it's good for the hobby as a whole, so for every person to have their own segment highlighted. But,
the Polish one especially, I've listened to all of them now. Like they did it originally in Polish only, and I think they had it behind a paywall, but that was like before the data slate dropped, etc. And so they then released it translated in English. I listened to all of them. So you got some, really interesting players in there, Poland, and I know a couple of you guys listen to their stuff. So thank you. It was really, really interesting, and especially the Skark episode. It was like all in Polish and just translated into English. It was really interesting.
Yeah, anyway. It's pretty cool. It's like that old school SBS sort of translated things where you hear the person talking. It's another enunciation of the voice, but it was just Tomek or Tweak doing it in 2 different voices. But anyway,
absolutely. All right.
Back to the topic at hand.
Well, no. I to me, again, anyone who is listening, it's because they're actually interested in us. We're not a current event, recent thing type podcast. We're generally delving deeper into something, and so don't feel free to explore into this. I'm not saying just filibuster like I'm doing right now, and just to do some space, because we're not live and just earning some tips here, because I don't monetize any of my stuff. But for me, if someone's actually interested in what we're doing, they're generally interested in the banter. If you want, I can start swearing at you, mate.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And I appreciate everyone who's listening to this. So it's great.
Alrighty.
Any support's always greatly appreciated.
Yeah. So the in case you haven't listened to it, and I really do recommend it. I was on Sam's podcast last month, and we were talking about better practices. And he explained a little bit more about why he put the extra S at the end of that. I'll have a link in the description of it. But just a quick summary for those who haven't listened to it. It's kind of us going through how and why we practice, and specifically like me, how do I practice, why I actually practice a lot. And for me, like the TLDR, it was like I use it to push myself and not get complacent. I'm a older guy now in the scene, so to speak, and there's a lot of young and hungry people, especially in Southeast Queensland. The 40k competitive Queensland group, what is that, like 40-50 people in there, and they're all keen little beans. So if I want to keep at the top of my level, I need to keep pushing myself. And realistically, I love the scene that we have here in Southeast Queensland. We've got, what I talked about on your podcast, it was 6 strong clubs with really strong players from all the clubs, and I love the little interclub, friendly rivalry we have, because we sharpen each other in a sense. So go watch it if you haven't already. Finish listening to this one, of course, but then you can switch over and go give him some love. It seemed to do well, at least. I was looking at the how many people listen to it on YouTube and things like that. So what do you think? It was a well listened one compared to your other ones, or it was like nobody?
Oh, look, I enjoyed it, so that's what the biggest thing is. It'll be funny to hear that the content creators do it for their own benefit and love more than anything else. And look, I'll be selfless in saying, though, if at least someone enjoys it or gets something out of it, then that's the best thing that can happen. So, I think people did enjoy it. I haven't gone through all the analytics and stats about who's loved what or what people got out of it, but look, I'm sure someone learned something from it, and worst case scenario, at least I learned something from it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this, I know for us, we're nerding out about this a little bit, and it is actually aligned to our topic. But I'll just address it right now. So our main topic, right, is lessons learned in and out of 40k, right? So things that you've learned doing or playing 40k that you've kind of used in real life, and I've put a little TM because every time anyone says real life, it's always funny. And then things that you've learned kind of from real life that you've brought into the hobby. And just on this, I know I personally have used, because I do, audio editing. It's minor audio editing, but it's audio editing nonetheless. I've done video editing. I've done, social media promotion, some minor marketing, like that type of stuff that I've then used in my own job. Like I've used it in my work, or I've used it for when my wife had a business. Like I've used different elements in the kind of safe space of my hobby and kind of promoting stuff that I'm not focusing on monetizing, to test out different ideas, to see what gets reach, etc. And then when it comes time to actually do it, when you're kind of in essence getting paid for it, you've got some experience in that. It's not scary, if you know what I mean.
No, yeah, that makes complete sense.
And yourself, like, have you ever used like all this kind of extracurricular activity in your job, in your real life, like specifically like podcast stuff?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So I think, like anyone, I think, fear of public speaking is something that's very common in a lot of people. And I knew, I always get quite anxious sometimes speaking and talking, and doing the podcast has allowed me to, I guess, grow a lot more confidence. Just realistically, speaking truthfully in talking to people. Like, I'm not like saying like I suffer from anxiety or anything like that, but I know, but people can do so from something like that. But be able to speak a bit more openly and clearly. I know I can talk very quickly when I get nervous and anxious, and the podcast has helped me slow down a lot and become better in a professional development space.
Yep.
But then also in just a 40k sense, organizing 40k players is some internal logistics for sure, and getting them to try and go to an event, or getting collecting money and organizing logistics and stuff like that. That's some life skills for anything, and in project management or anything business related. And we don't have to go deep dive into a lot of things, but running your own events. So I've had the pleasure of running quite a few RTTs and a GT, getting trains set up and all that jazz. You learn a lot of, I guess, valuable life skills per se for what a real life event is like. So, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to pick up on two of those things. I have to take some notes because as you're talking, it's like sparking some ideas. So, I definitely find it opens doors or creates connections to other people. The TNO was great because there was a whole bunch of people who came from down south, like New South Wales and Melbourne, who we either played or we just met, and they say, "I love your podcast," etc. And it opens those doors, and it has a bit of familiarity that they kind of know. I think the streamers call it parasocial relationships and things like that. And I don't try to go down that route because I don't find myself that special. But but you know what I mean? Like, it's like they know a little bit about kind of what you are and where your approach is, and so they feel a little bit emboldened to come and approach you and say hello. Have you found that?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So when I first got into Warhammer, funny enough, so one of my actually first major events was Uprising, so in 2022. And so getting into 40k, so I sort of started playing tournaments in during COVID, like 2021. So when I was living in Canberra, we were quite lucky. We only had a little bit of lockdowns, and I was able to travel into New South Wales for a bit. And anyway, but going to Uprising in 2022. Yeah, it'll be in 2022, so not this year, last year. Deneth. So I've been listening to the Normal Blokes podcast for a bit, like learning a bit from there. And I was petrified because I was one of the only people from Canberra that went to the event. And I met Deneth and I said hi, and it was nice to meet him. And it's one of those funny things where, like, look, there's a Warhammer podcaster, right? There's a normal human being, but I was terrified and nervous to approach him per se and like say hi. I said, "Oh, I'm a fan of your podcast," and he was the most lovely human being I could ask for. So it was great, and then it just eased my nerves a lot. And I had the pleasure of actually playing him round 5 or 6. So yeah, I think.
And then you found out he wasn't actually nice.
That's it. That's when the real Denise came out. So, but no, and I think. Yeah, like when someone has a connection like that, and or maybe addresses topics that you maybe can relate to, it's like, oh wow, they're just another human being, or someone I can understand or relate to.
Like I know one of my friends from a while back that I haven't seen or talked to for like 5+ years. He used to come over quite often. Shout out to Ali if you listen to this, mate. He heard me on because I was on TNB with Luke talking about something rather about 2 months ago, and he goes, "Oh, that's right, Simon." And then he got a link to my podcast, and he started listening to some of my stuff, and then he reached out to me, and he's come over a couple of times now, and it's great. It's like rekindling some friendships that we used to have.
That's too funny. It reminds me of a story. We won't go too far into details, but I was at a professional development course, and I met some of your colleagues, Simon, at the said conference, and it was hilarious to make the connection. And it was an immediate, I guess, or chemistry per se, or something you could break the ice with. So it was it's a small world.
They messaged me straight away. It's like, oh, we just met this, and they took the selfie with you, and I was like, oh yeah. And so I started messaging them. I was like, yeah. And they go, you play something called 40K? What is?
We play with little toy soldiers and make tactics and roll dice or something like that.
That's right. I still love calling it man dollies.
Yeah.
Also, they're chasing people. I know you've done this just recently with the TTS event, and thank you for being very understanding with my I'm going to call them shit cunt teammates. I love you guys, but you're a bunch of shit cunts. Anyway, chasing people, it gets you patience, like that level of patience. Like I'm sure if and when you have kids, you're going to be really, really patient with them. The moment you become a TO, and I think I might have to have McGowan on this, in the near future, because he is super patient with almost every attendee. Now, some people should know better, and so he gets a little bit narky with them, but like new people to the scene, all that type of stuff, he's got 4 kids himself. He's just the nicest bloke, and I think it's because he's been a TO for so long that he has seen depravity.
Yeah, he's seen much worse, and it's just another thing to deal with, right? It's like that old, like when you train yourself, and like the first time, like let's say lifting weights. So like when you're lifting weights, like the first time you lift, I would say bench 60 kilos, it's very hard, but then it gets easier and easier and easier, and like you get stronger by it per se, and it just you're able to do more reps, and it doesn't feel as difficult to deal with. So when that situation comes up again, it's nice and easy to lift. And I think a good approach to that as well. Like it's funny you mentioned being, I guess, patient per se is. It's like an old saying I always try and keep the mantra of like, will this matter like even like 1 month from now, or 3 months from now, or 6 months from now? Because sometimes in the moment it absolutely sucks. Like some things just you upset you. You're in a shit moment, and you have to sort of reflect and say, is this going to matter 1 month from now? Am I going to be thinking about this or reflecting on this? And 90% of the time, it's going to be no. Like, and that just gives a lot of patience and I guess relief to go, okay, I'm in this crap moment right now. Just deal with it and move onwards and upwards. So,
yep.
Look,
no, yes, that links to one of my points that I was going to talk about for the kind of real life to 40K and back again. It's what you're trying to achieve, right? Like at the moment, you might be saying, I want to win this game, or I want to dominate this conversation, or I want people to respect my authority. It's like that element. But if you approach life in general, right, with the idea of growth mindset, that you're just on this journey going towards some vision that you've set for yourself, and you're just learning different things. And if something stupid happens, you just file it in your brain as that's interesting that happens. That's an interesting thing. Or that's something that I didn't think would happen. I wonder why that happened, and really try and learn from it. So if you're approaching life in general as a growth mindset journey, then you generally become a more patient type person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that growth mindset, it's funny. So to give a bit of context for listeners who don't know me, and some may know me but don't know, so I sort of had a very unique sort of university education. So I studied overseas in the US, and I played college football. So I played Division II American football, so as a left tackle. And played like NFL football, so Super Bowl and everything. So hence why I was able to make quite a bit of a connection to the US, because I lived there for 5 years and traveled all around. So which is great and an amazing experience. But when you're talking about having that growth mindset, old head coach, he used to always say, if you ain't green and growing, you're ripe and rotten. And there was always a funny saying I always keep in my mind is like, you always have to be, I guess, learning and understanding, have that growth mindset, because once you think you're too good and you don't need to learn anymore, well, you're rotting. Like everyone else is trying to get better and surpass you fundamentally.
Absolutely. So, well, I know it's, we're 20 minutes in, and we're now just getting back to tell us a little bit about yourself. But
it's okay.
So what got you into 40K, mate? Just you want to go through, just introduce a little bit about, what got you into 40K, what club you're in, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been off and on with 40K for a while. So I initially got into it when I was quite young, like not even like 7, 8 years old. So fortunate enough, when I lived in Canberra, I was quite close to a big major shopping centre. Think of like for Queensland listeners, think of a Chermside, or for people who live in Sydney, Queen Victoria building. So a big Westfield shopping centre. And in there was a Games Workshop, or now it's called a Warhammer store. And so I would often, when I would go to the shopping centre, I would go by, and I was quite early on, and I loved it. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. So the Lord of the Rings magazine sort of came in around those times, and my parents, also my mum and dad, were both big fans of the Lord of the Rings films, so they got me subscribed up and started early on in there. But I was sort of...
Is this before or after you went to the US?
Well before. So this was like early 2000s. So I was going in and out. So I sort of play for like 3-4 months, then I'll drop off for a year, then I'll play for a couple months, then I'll drop off for a year. So I remember the Assault on Blackreach, the Battle for Macragge. I was around when the original Black Templars Codex came out. I still have it, like the old school Emperor's Champion and the metal pose. I still have many fond memories of those stuff. And so I sort of stopped around year 7 of high school. So it was like 2008. I stopped completely. I was playing a bit of fantasy and stuff like that, but I just stopped and sort of lost interest due to a multitude of factors. And then, funny enough, when I was at the end of uni, I picked it up again. So I came back to Australia from overseas holidays, also from uni break, and I found all my old Warhammer because I just came back, and so I was like, oh, this is cool. I remember when I did this, and immediately went down the rabbit hole of watching mini wargaming all again, and then seeing all the painting tutorials and stuff like that. And it was, for me, it was a outlet for other than video games, which I had quite a addiction per se to, and Warhammer's never become a now plastic crack addiction. So and then so so I've sort of been playing. So I went back to the States, and I was just doing painting because there was no local clubs and stuff like that. So I just did some painting, and then when I eventually came back to Australia after I graduated, just played some casual games, and I eventually met up with a local game store there. They had like monthly RTTs, and I was deciding whether I play Age of Sigmar or 40K. I eventually resulted in 40K because I saw a better competitive element for it, and for me, I needed that competitive outlet outside of what I used to play with American football, which didn't damage my body or give me as many head injuries. So, I mean, 40K has been successful so far, no head injuries or concussions, so let's keep it that way. And it's not as physically enduring. So, and for me, Warhammer is just that competitive outlet which tests my brain, per se, and I'm able to invest time and effort into and get rewards out of. So,
is that why you stopped the football?
So I finished my 4.5 years, so I did my 5 years of playing career there, and towards the end, I was sort of done anyways. Like, all the studies of CTE stuff came out, and I was like, I don't need to do this. I wasn't good enough anyways to make it to the next level of going to NFL or stuff like that, and I honestly wasn't interested enough. I was sort of pretty done, and dreading playing football anymore. So I just wanted to get done, do my university degrees, and then come back home and start, I guess, my professional life per se, and get my fix of competitive elements outside of it. So,
okay,
and Warhammer fell into it.
I mean, if you're okay with it, you tell me to shut up or not. But I'm always interested in that because I talk to lots of people at the very competitive level of 40k, right? Both on podcasts, but also outside of it, and that conversation and that kind of decision, I've had a number of times, or I've sensed it a number of times over the last 10, 11 years with people about someone at the top of their game. Right, I won't do specifics, but I'll just say someone at the top of their game of 40k. We might have just won, for the 15th time ATC or something like that, and it's a hint to the rest of Australia. But I need you laughing, Sam. All right. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Yeah. So. We've just won the ATC and we come back and then they take like a year, 2 years off. And they kind of lose that spark about what was driving them, what they really wanted to do. And that kind of feeling, what you just said, that kind of feeling of dread. I know, and I kind of explored this over a number of podcasts about psychology that I had with Vander and a couple of other people. I was feeling elements of that. About, I've invested so much on this, I've gotten to a certain level, but what's keeping me pushing me? Like, do I go to the next level or not, at this moment? Anyway, look, I'm rambling a little bit, but the point being is, I've had that experience, a little bit for myself, but also with a bunch of people in the 40k space. You had that in your world, in the NFL space. What did you learn that you can maybe explore a little bit, if you're willing to share, that might be useful for people who are feeling the same way in 40k?
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting question. I think there's a lot to unravel there. So I'm going to refer to something. Actually, I know we're going to discuss about other topics that influence 40k, but you got to sort of judge what's most important for you. And it was interesting. So there's an interesting Magic the Gathering article, which when I was doing study and research, I came across, and it's called The Doorkeeper, and it talks about, it's a narrative story about some Magic the Gathering player. So he's playing a tournament per se. I'll bring this back, but hopefully it makes sense. He's playing an online tournament, and he does very well, etc. But he often questions himself. There's things that are going on in his real life which he's sacrificing in order to be better at this Magic the Gathering tournament. So, like spending time with the girlfriend, watching a movie, going out for dinner with the parents, etc. And he asked, at the end of the day, he won this Magic online tournament. But what did he sacrifice in order to do so? So, I guess the question is, life changes, right? I mean, you, Simon, you have some kids, and there's only 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. So what you do with your time to be the best 40k player you can be, whilst, I guess, being a loving husband, a caring father, is a big toss-up of hours and dedication. So something has to give at the end of the day. And all that being said, I think what's, like, for me, when I went over, my goal was to be the best I could be doing the American football thing, but that passion just died off, and I didn't need to do it anymore, or didn't find the requirements to do so, and I valued other things instead. So, and I'm sure that's going to happen to me with Warhammer in the future. So, like, whenever we start a family or things progress in my professional career, look,
was there anything in particular that was a trigger?
Legitimately, it was the fear of, for me, like injuries or something that's permanently disabling. So CTE. So I can't remember the exact acronym. Is repetitive brain injuries to your head, like suffering concussions and stuff like that, will cause like early onset dementia, or potential I guess will injure your worsen your life in the future. because of the sport you're playing and just the repetitive head injuries. So for me, that was actually quite a big fear for me. Was look, I'm wise enough, and I'm playing a sport that's helping. Like, look, I love playing the sport. I still watch it to this day, but I couldn't justify putting my body into these positions and suffering from it. Look, others who are NFL athletes, they suffer the same thing, right? They'll have arthritis or they'll have long-term injuries, which after they've tied up the shoelaces for the final time, they're still suffering. And like, what does that all cost per se? And for me, it was like, look, I enjoyed the game. It gave me a lot of benefits of like helping pay for my university education and everything, and gave me a lifetime experience of living overseas and exploring a different culture. But I do not need to play again. So when I came back to Australia, like obviously the club I used to play for here asked, "Oh, why don't you play, Sam?" And I asked myself, "What's the purpose?" Like for me, winning, say, a club championship in Canberra or even Queensland per se, like yes, it's cool. Like obviously you enjoy social sport and stuff like that, but for me, it's like I would rather be doing other things legitimately. I mean, I'd rather be getting better at my professional career or literally playing with toy soldiers, as that became my newfound passion and interest. So. And as well as like, there's the training and stuff for such a competition. It's intense and like, I'm still not the smallest dude in the world, but like lifting all that much, and I just got sick of being that heavy and lifting so much. And that's another topic is health. And I'm always trying to lose weight and become a better, healthier human being, and that's a journey I'm on as well. So, there's a multitude of factors, and I'm more than happy to talk about them. It's just it's a long thing, and I think. Right now, personally, I would love to be the best 40k player I can be and get to the next echelon, which for me is to try and attempt to be on Team Australia. I know it's a journey I'm working towards. I'm not there yet, but I'm working towards it. I'm going to do it the best I can within the realm I can to get there. So, and what does it take is we'll study, practice, and I'm going to get there whilst hopefully not causing a divorce or losing my job. So those are the bare minimum. So, but I know long. I was going to say I know long term though. But this is a goal for now. Like, look, I want to make Team Australia. I want to be the best 40k player I can be. But what happens when I say I have kids or my professional career changes? Well, I've got to reevaluate all those things. And look, competitive 40k may take a side grade for me to do other things, and I'll find that passion or interest elsewhere.
It's a very, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about here, and I just want to think a little bit. They call it filibustering. I'm filibustering while I'm trying to work out which way to go. I might address quickly the selfish reason why I'm asking some of these things, because I did kind of discuss it a little bit on some of the earlier podcasts about when we kind of talked about the psychological aspect of it, and I recommend listening to any of those if you're actually interested in it, about what it is that I like playing about this game. Can you get that in other elements that doesn't get you as frustrated and things like that? So I'm asking you some of these questions in essence for a bit of a selfish reason, in that I've achieved a lot in my own opinion. I've kind of met I did one of the things that we'll talk about in a second, where you set the vision, and you set the vision that is in your own mind very audacious, and when you achieve that vision along that journey, and we'll talk about that in a second, what's next in that journey, so to speak, right? And the realization, because when you're on the journey, you're very, very focused on being on the journey and learning what you can. And when you achieve what you want from that journey, you now have to reset that vision. And if that resetting that vision doesn't involve you taking the journey that's aligned to what you've already just done, it's now a side grade in essence. You know, it's like you've like for Australia context, it's like I wanted to get to Brisbane, and so you go from Canberra to Brisbane, and you've gotten to Brisbane, and you go, all right, cool. Now I was going north this whole time. Let's go west, and you go to Toowoomba. It's now a different journey. You're still traveling, you're still doing interesting things, but you're not going north anymore. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. It's
yeah. I was going to say, so let me interrupt you there, Simon. I think it's a big philosophical topic. Is like when you achieve your goals per se, but what's next? Like for example, like Olympic athletes, they spend all their life and career looking to try and achieve gold at the Olympics, and then what happens when they achieve gold? Like they've done it all. Like what's next? I know. So in the UFC, so Israel Adesanya, so he was the former middleweight champion. So he talked about quite openly. So when he achieved the middleweight championship of in the UFC, he was actually legit. He said he was depressed, and he went to therapy the very next day because psychologically he spent everything up until that point focused on that goal. And then he was like, what do I need to do next? And I think it's a big topic to uncover is for like those very influential people. So your famous sports stars, like your Tom Brady's, your Cristiano Ronaldo. So those famous NFL player and a soccer player who are at top echelons of their game. What do they keep doing to go next? Tom Brady famously, obviously there may be some things behind the scenes, but he played another NFL season, and there was a major season behind his divorce. Like, is one of the big leading factors. He was so committed to that craft, it caused family issues, and then I guess you ask like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, like how much money is enough money for them? So look, they have more than enough money to live a very, very financially, I guess, wealthy life. But what makes them keep going? What makes them keep going every single day?
And it can't be linked to money. Like their vision isn't linked to money because, as you said, they've achieved that. There has to be something else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a very common thing is I think there's a very famous Jim Carrey quote about like if everyone knew. I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's like if everyone knew what it was like to be a millionaire, like no one would be happy. Or it's like if someone could like take a couple of steps in my shoes,
mate. The most, and this is so the lotto. I think this was in England. Yes. They did the study. Yeah. Most lotto winners, they actually it turns out that they wish they never won the lotto. Their life experience, in essence, is actually worse than when they had won it, because generally. They're poorer as well. They usually lose it unless they get some good financial advice about how to deal with it. The vast majority of them, they lose the money, and the whole experience of gaining a whole bunch of money that they're not used to, having a whole bunch of people, in essence, ask them for money and them having to say no, or if they do say yes, it just gets pissed up the wind, so to speak. That whole thing makes their life miserable in essence, and they've had a worse life outcome from earning all that money.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very, very true. That's a great point made up. I want to say it's like almost like 50% of people like lose the whole money. Like it's quite a substantial amount. There's a sports documentary very much related to a finance thing called Broke, so Broke. It was done by ESPN as part of like their 30 for 30 series, and it talks about how all these famous sports athletes and stars. After they make millions of dollars, but then within like 3 or 4 years, they're completely financially broke or they lost it all. And because of obviously to a multitude of factors of financial discipline, upbringing, and stuff like that. But like it's interesting to hear about how yes, you could have all this money, but if your foundations aren't correct or you don't set the correct goals afterwards or realize where things are going, bad things can happen.
Yeah. Look, I did explore this a little bit for myself with Vanda, and I'll probably, because Connor's another guy in our club that also does a lot in the kind of applied psychology side of the world, and I was meant to have a podcast with him earlier on, but we've delayed it until end of November. I'm going to explore more of that because I guess what I'm trying to not get out of you, but it's more, what were the indications? What were the things that triggered in you that that this journey that you were on, that you'd been working on for a while, Like, what were early indications to say, hey, maybe this is not the right journey for me? That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. I think sometimes you have to be realistic, right? Like I want to say it's like 1% of all college athletes make the NFL, like from an American football perspective, and like in the NBA, like it's a smaller figure. I had people who I played with who would often talk about how they're going to make the NFL, and I hate to say it, but none of them did. So look, some of them like to shoot for the stars, and like look, some of them do make it, which is great, and you always hear those success stories. I guess for me, early indicators. So the position I was playing, is quite a you need to be a certain build, and I wasn't tall enough or big enough or strong enough to play that position at the professional level. And I also just lost the love and desire for it. So I was not willing or to go through the grueling process of training every single day for the next, basically every single day for the next couple of years to get better or go to that level. And maybe that gratification and outcome that it would provide wasn't enough for me. So, look, I mean, maybe if I was a better specimen, and look, I mean, maybe it could have made it if I put my heart and soul into it. But
what you just said though, that aligns with me. Like last year, okay, so last year, right? I signed up for WTC, right? I signed up for my third campaign in essence for World Championships, and I know what it takes now, and I put in this is my third try, and I put in almost 250% more effort than I did in the past. You know what I mean? And I was probably the most practice of our previous 2 times that I'd gone, right? I was captain 1 year, and so I was definitely trying to show the team how much effort you need to put in. And I know I put in way more effort in. I missed birthday parties and things like that, lots of family activities. That last 2 months, I played games almost every single day. And the camps, etc. Like we had the week-long camps where I'd play, 3 to 5 games a day for a week straight. I'd literally go to work, come home, go straight to Eric's, and then I'd have 2 games minimum. Like that was that was something I had that passion, I had that drive, and yes, it showed in the results, but I drove myself to that because I had that passion and drive. Whereas this year, as I said, I've talked about it a whole bunch in the podcast. I do not, under any circumstances, I don't even have, I reckon, 20% of that passion or drive right now. And I'm getting a little bit into that, like especially as 10th continues unraveling in essence, and I'm playing interesting games with the new Tyranids, but I know I do not have that same passion that I had last year, and so I wouldn't be putting in that extra effort. And if there was a family gathering, I'd say, sorry guys, I can't have a game, I've got a family thing. Hell, I literally did that last Saturday. Didn't go to Eric's. I went to say hello and I had a quick chat with him, but I didn't go for games because I had a family activity. And I as you were saying before, I prioritized something else over it because I didn't have that same passion. So I think you've kind of already answered through your own experience the kind of feeling I'm getting right now. And it's like I'm trying to recapture that same feeling I had last year, this year, but it's very, very different. And I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to explore and understand, why, what exactly is different, and how much should I be pushing versus how much should I just accept that I'm in a different space.
Yeah, exactly. I think also we have to keep reminding ourselves, like, this is a game, this is a hobby, this is something we should be enjoying and having fun with. Like, it's not putting food on our table per se, or paying the mortgage on our house or anything like that. So you should be enjoying your free time. You only have so much of it. So what you dedicate to it, unless there's obviously very good reason. So obviously leading into WTC, I'm sure there are games you're like, I do not want to play a game here, but it is important for me and I don't want to let the team down. I play this game and get that extra rep in. So and look, I've had this I guess my own internal debates with me right now with 10th edition. Like early on, before the balanced starter slate, I dropped out of the TTS tournament because I just couldn't bring it to myself to play a game because I was so just not enjoying it. I legitimately wasn't enjoying playing the game, and I didn't need to do that. Like, I don't need to put myself through that effort to play. And like right now, like there's a couple of people locally which I'm dabbling in. I want to try and explore is playing Blood Bowl or Marvel Crisis Protocol, just as a different game, something to explore, and maybe we'll talk about maybe a bit later. Is like learn from them, like learn from those games and apply it to 40k, or see how I respond to it. Like, my goal right now is like obviously try and become a better 40k player and be of that caliber to make the WTC, but maybe I get more gratification or satisfaction by doing all these other games and playing them rather than being on that grind mindset to being a better 40k player.
Yeah, I like it. I think you're on the right journey, and so this will lead us into. So I've talked about the main topic, which is, lessons learned in and out of 40k, right? And so one of my ones about real life to 40k is stuff that we were just talking about, right? And so they're kind of aligned what we were just talking about and your last point, which is, so this is a Jordan Peterson special, which is kind of, he was talking about fulfillment and kind of living a meaningful life and things like that. And that's on to take on responsibility, take on as much as you can take. And then as you achieve that, take on some more, in essence. And you grow as a person. So it's kind of element, it's the kind of common theme I'm going to continue talking about until I probably die, is just having that growth mindset. And humans are notoriously, whatever that bloody word is, affected by biases. Our brain is what makes us different from other species and other animals. And we can use habits and biases and things like that for ill or for gain. And so you can use kind of elements of confirmation bias to have, and I had to look up what they actually call it nowadays, but it's apparently it's called the behavioral confirmation effect. You guys might know it as self-fulfilling prophecies, which is if you think, you're a winner, so to speak, or, you're meant to be, I don't know, really cool, whatever, you're going to be generally acting in a way that purports that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I am good. And so you're going to go out of your way through kind of a little bit of confirmation bias that you're going to go out of your way to do good things or to see things where you can be a good person. Whereas normally you would ignore those things. And you can use that when you're setting your vision, right? So one of the things about Jordan Peterson and this is any other self-help, Tony Robbins or any of those, it's like set the vision of the direction that you're trying to get to, create in essence this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy or behavioral confirmation effect, or however you want to describe it, and you will go on a journey, in essence, of growth towards that vision. And you will notice things that you maybe didn't notice in the past that will help you along that journey.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing top point. So speaking of like setting that vision, there's a lot to unravel there, but I think relate to Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think that's how you pronounce it, so he always talks about, so obviously back from his bodybuilding days and his movie career, he's a big vision guy, so someone who in his mind's eye, as I like to allude, he would envision what it feels like to be on top of the mountain or be at that position where he wants to be. And funnily enough, I did a very similar thing when I was wanting to go to the US. Like, I set a vision of what it would look like for me to be in Sydney Airport about to go to the States. And like, that was part of my goal, was like, I wanted to build towards that. And then legitimately, I'm not blowing smoke up people's asses, is I have that goal in my mind of what it looks like to be at Brisbane International Airport going to Belgium, like, or what it feels like to be in Mechlin or wherever the WTC is. And like, drive towards that. And I think to unravel a lot there, like, so some of your partners and wives, girlfriends will talk about something called The Secret. It's that self-help book, which was famous like in the early 2000s. And they talk about manifestation and like, I guess, willing things into existence and putting things out there and things will happen, putting on your vision board and all that jazz. So look, say what you will about some of that stuff. Some of it's legit, or some of it's legit in the sense of like self-fulfilling prophecy is helpful, and like you often
just on that, well, let's use your example. Like, that's a perfect example. I've listened to a bunch of Arnold's podcasts and episodes where he's been interviewed before. Arnold's a perfect example. He had that vision, as you said. He moved to Hollywood, right? So he wanted to be that. So he moved to Hollywood, and he's in essence improving his English, but he's doing the bodybuilding stuff. So and I think it was his cousin, I think they started or they got a job and then eventually started their own business laying bricks, right? They were bricklayers or construction people, but they were doing bricks and they were using, like, they were smashing it. They were working, he was saying, like, he was working like twice as fast as everyone else because he was using those as PT, like physical training exercises. So he was lifting bricks and doing stuff, and he was getting stronger and stronger. So he would still go to the gym in essence and do specific training, but he would then do this additional training, and that's that kind of behavioral confirmation effect. In that he had a vision: I want to be, an actor in essence in Hollywood and be super strong. And so he moves to a place. He finds opportunities to move to a place, and he gets to the place, and then he gets a job that's not, in McDonald's cooking burgers. It's building up his muscles to continue doing that. And, and then he gets to work on different houses and all that. And he met a couple of famous people. He's building houses in Hollywood. So he's getting to meet, rich and famous people, etc. So it's like, that's what I'm kind of talking about. It's not just about setting the vision. It's setting the kind of those biases in your favor so that you're going to look for opportunities that will align to that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to bring it down to a 40k sense, and something I legitimately try and do is when you roll dice, I always believe I'm going to roll good. I'm going to roll more sixes than anyone else. Like, I have that positive mindset of I'm going to roll better dice. Is it actually going to happen? Absolutely not. Like, I don't think it's going to happen, but I believe it enough that you see things happening, or I don't notice when bad things are happening. Whereas the opposite can also be true. Like, if you believe you have bad dice, like shit's going to hit the fan, well, you're going to notice when things go badly. And it's an interesting dilemma of, I know, like you mentioned Jordan Peterson before, and look, obviously, political views aside of what he does and stuff like that, I think some of these core messaging and lessons he likes to talk about are very good. Like, he talked about the whole process of being a lobster and like being positive and strong and confident. It's like one of these like 12 lessons for life. I'm just putting a short analogy of it, but if you're confident and brave and almost like fake it till you make it, well, there's something that happens there. And I think there's a big core message of having that vision or outlook of setting your sights on something allows you to those things to enter your life, or you're able to put yourself in the right position to do so. So, for example, like, look, I'm trying to become a better 40k player. What am I going to do? I'm going to look for people who are better at the game. I'm going to get myself involved and stuff like that. I'm going to try and play against the best. I'm going to rep the best. I'm going to be more up to date. Whereas if I didn't set myself down and try and establish that initial vision or goal, I wouldn't be as open to those opportunities. And it's funny how sometimes doors just open because you put yourself in the right position to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is possibly why we both are doing podcasts as well. Because we were just talking before about how the podcast, in essence, opens some doors. Again, not necessarily, doors that gets us into teams or things, but it just opens doors into interactions that we wouldn't necessarily have, or relationships that we wouldn't necessarily have had. We're doing things that are tangential to our vision, but are still getting us towards that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, doing the podcast I do, so I try and cover a wide range of topics and just something I am genuinely interested in, or I think could be interesting for other people to learn about. So
yeah, the whole interviewing all the other WTC teams, in essence, it gets, you know what I mean? Like, it gets known over there as well. So when you will eventually go over there, even if as a coach, but you will go over there, and then they will know you. because they've talked to you, and you're also comfortable with them. As like, these people are just normal people. Yes, they're representing their countries, etc., but they're normal people, and so you're comfortable with them. You're not going to be as starstruck, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely, and it opens doors, right? Like, you meet a couple of international people, and I'm sure, Simon, you have some people overseas you've met through the ETC and WTC who, if worst case scenario, you could crash on a couch while you're backpacking around Europe or the US or something like that. Like, you open those doors and stuff like that.
Literally did that. Mr. Rude. I love him from his him and Miriam. They're from Netherlands. Wonderful humans.
Yeah. So,
and if I pronounce your name wrong, my apologies.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure of talking to a couple of those people from the Netherlands. So Dino and Dick Vanderhaas. Like, I've talked to them previously and like through various Discords and stuff like that. And like, I have enough people who I've talked to just through random Discords or Facebook messages that like, doors open, right? And like if they were ever in Australia and they wanted a bed to sleep on or couch to crash on, I'll go out of my way to help them out, because look, it's a 40k family, right? It's a global community. For me, it is, anyways.
Absolutely. And my apologies, it was Miriel. I believe that's how you pronounce it, right?
But you never saw her, so
look, I did not see her for like 2 days, and she was a figment of imagination until we actually had dinner together, and I was like, okay, you now exist.
Okay, or maybe Rude figured out to hire a wife for that time being. So,
look, that actually came up in conversation. She just like, no, I'm not actually. She's just hired me.
Too funny.
Excellent. And well, leading on to that, it's the whole kind of dice thing. It's another person I really recommend that I've learnt, outside of 40k, that I brought into 40k, is Jocko Willink.
Willink? Yeah, Jocko Willink, yep.
Yeah, I always forget how to pronounce his last name. Anyway, he's written a bunch of books, and he's got a podcast as well. But one of his more famous books, and actually, there's a bunch of kids' books that my kids love as well. But the big one is Extreme Ownership, and his main premise, in essence, is that it's the same premise as Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I think I pronounced that correctly.
Perfect, smashed it. That's a different.
He wrote his book called The Gulag Archipelago, and there's a whole bunch of other books like this, which is this. The premise is the situation that you are in your life, or the position you are, say, in the game, is based upon you, solely you. Own every element of that, and if you don't blame the world, the position of Jupiter, how hot it is, the dice, your opponent, your neighbor who's stinky, all of that. Don't blame other people. It's like the situation that you are in your life right now is because of you, and own your mistakes, own the position that you are in your life and your situation. And once you've owned it, then you can actually grow from that. You can kind of move on to the next step of how you're going to solve that, so to speak. I've summarized it as briefly as I can. There's probably something I've butchered there, but that, in essence, is his main message. And I find that it means that when I'm getting, we'll say, legitimately diced, I say to myself, that's okay. Where am I in my journey here? My opponent, so this is, I talked about it in the last podcast. My opponent was from New South Wales. He was friends with Alex, the Greek, and we were having a fun game. He was getting absolutely awesome. He was rolling sixes. He was channeling you, Sam, and I was rolling ones and twos, and he was feeling so bad for me. And I was saying, this guy, I don't want him to leave this game feeling bad. Even if it's bad for me, because he's just getting lucky. No, I'm making him feel like, nah, mate, this happens. Enjoy it. Enjoy that you're absolutely fucking me. Just enjoy that, okay? and he seemed to he was legitimately, well, he seemed legitimately happy that I was approaching it that way. That I wasn't getting like salty or anything like that. And I was still giving him a game. Like, I didn't just pack up my things and say, yep, good game, you get the 20, move on with your life. Like, we played the whole game. He got a good win. And I wasn't salty about it in any way. And he seemed like that was a positive element to his life. And so in my journey, like right now where I'm in my journey, is every interaction I have with humans, with other humans, I want to be somewhat positive. My interaction with you has made your life better in some way. Now, it could still be a negative interaction overall, as in you didn't like that I said something to you. But if I try not to lie, right? This is another Jordan Peterson one, which is tell the truth or at least don't lie. So if I'm telling you the truth and you're not happy, let's say, that I've said the truth, and the interaction is not, from your point of view, pleasant, it's still it might take a year, but it's still a positive interaction because you maybe needed to hear that truth, so to speak. You know what I mean? So my journey right now is about making every interaction as positive as can be to the other human, not pleasant. Positive is different to pleasant. And in that case, I could step back from myself and it's like, I am absolutely getting fucked on here, but my opponent seems to be not enjoying the absolute shellacking that he should be. If I was in his position, I'd be laughing my ass off and just, pointing at the opponent and saying, you suck. But so I'm going to make it really safe for him to just start gloating, like that was where I was. And it seemed to work really well. Anyway, lots of things to talk about there.
It's all right. I think your opponent there was just trying to make sure he was like a good sport or taking care of you, right? Because like obviously this is a hobby. You spend almost 2-3 hours getting to know this person, and like we're playing with mini toy soldiers. And I think it's important to like balance that. Your opponent's, I guess, game manners per se. Look, and like not everyone's gonna be perfect, right? Like people have egos and stuff like that, and like don't handle losing well and stuff like that. Like I know we're not trying to talk about that. So it's but it's interesting trying to, I guess, manage that and like try and encourage your opponent on, like maybe talk to them, like I think celebrate when they roll good dice, and like you celebrate when you roll good dice and stuff like that, and like or feel for them and stuff like that. I think it's obviously a byproduct of like playing at the table and being a good gentleman or good person at the table. And just to sort of backtrack a little bit there, Jocko Willink, the Extreme Ownership book, I really actually enjoyed. I've listened to that on Audible, and it was good. So it's breaks it down like a leadership trait, then it gives a real world example and a military example, and I think anyone could learn from it. And something I always like from that book is he talked about an example like in the real world sometimes management makes some really dumb decisions, right? Or someone makes a dumb decision and you ask why and you often want to go out to them and just like yell at them and say, you're an absolute idiot, why are you doing this? And the big learning principle from there was to actually just take a step back and reflect and say, why are they doing that? And what are they trying to do? Like, because you have to sort of believe they're trying to make the overall vision better. So look, if it was in the military examples, like this they've got all these processes and procedures. It's mundane, it's boring, and it slows things down. But there's probably a very good reason why the procedures and processes are there, because unless they're a psychopath, they're trying to improve the US military, right? They're not trying to make it worse or anything like that. So I think it's very easy to criticize someone, but I think like a good saying, and it was very famous on a TV show called Ted Lasso, was be curious, not judgmental. And it's good, like part of that growth mindset is like trying to understand or figure out why someone's doing a reason and trying to understand it more from the background. And like we could ask the same thing when anyone publishes a Warhammer 40k list or why they do this certain move. It's very easy to go flame them and say, you're an absolute idiot, you should be taking this or you should be doing this instead. But it's often probably better to step back and ask why they're doing this, or maybe ask them why they do this, and you'll most likely learn something from it or be able to educate them about why you view something differently, and you both learn from it. So
and what you just said is one of the next points is about like 40k to real life, like going backwards, which is the cool thing that 40k really encourages, and other video games do this to some extent, which is you can test and prove an idea and have in essence a rivalry with people, and they go, what the hell are you doing, etc., right? But if your visions are aligned, like, so what you were saying before, which is, if you're working with someone and they do something completely opposite to what you would do, assuming they're not being malicious, and you have the same kind of end state or vision, right? Then be open-minded to them achieving that. So in 40K, and Eric and I, well, Eric specifically is a master at this, which is Eric and I, we both want to win the game, right?
Yep.
I come up with a list. We'll say it's a Tyranid list. He comes up with a Tyranid list. Nowadays, it's much more aligned than in the past. But that's because we're symbiotic in that way. But in the past, it would have been I have some weird ass list, and he's got some even more weird ass lists, right? We're trying to still achieve the same vision, win the game, but we've come from it from two completely different approaches. And rather than just immediately saying that's shit, we prove it. And that's I think this is we cover this in like episode 3 or something like that in this podcast, and I've talked about it in like my old YouTube videos, which is the proof in all competition, in all competitive events, is the outcome. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're running a race and your training was by eating 57 bananas and then running around in circles until you vomited, right? And your opponent's training is general gym and all that type of stuff, and then you go onto the running race thing and you smash them. They could have laughed and called you an idiot the whole time, but you won the race. You know what I mean? Like the outcome proved. If you both have the same vision and you got the outcome and they didn't, they kind of have to shut up in essence. Like it's like they can't just call you some stupid. And that's having that open mind and having the not just thinking you're the best and you know everything, etc. It's proven so many times in 40K. I've used a bunch of times in real life with my kids, in my work even, where I'll have two different people doing, in essence, looking for the same outcome, but doing it in different ways. And rather than me saying to them, what are you doing? I would do it this way, so you're going to do it my way. I just watch and learn. And I was like, oh, cool. I didn't even think of that. That's actually a really good idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great point to make. It's quite easy. Like, do you want to maybe step in or go, no, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it's hard sometimes to pull yourself back when you just want to help out per se or be involved. But it's often better letting them do their own thing or figure something out, and maybe you learn something along the way. And look, at the end of the day, when people are, they fuck around and they find out, right? Like if they screw up and they don't do what's needed, and then they'll find out one way or the other what their actual effort and mentality is. So you could go in spirals and go doom spiral. I won't say doom spiral, but you could go in some tangents and weird tangents and do self. Anyways, backtracking to.
I understand what you're saying, man. It has made me a lot more humble in some respects, because things that you think and most Australians know this because most of the rest of the world say this of us, which is like, we have weird and wonderful lists and they say that won't work in XYZ, and then we prove them wrong. And it's the same thing. It's like, we don't just automatically say that list is trash. I rarely say that nowadays. Like, unless I've actually played against it and then see it's trash, I don't just off the cuff say this is crap. You know what I mean? I don't do it because I've been proven wrong so many times. I'm humble about it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what they're trying to achieve there. Let's actually test it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's unless you're in the world of hot take culture and saying controversial things just for the likes and interaction, that's a whole other thing. But I think to iterate, I know there's a famous scenario. Was it 2016 or 2017 ETC, or maybe it was a bit later than that? But when Eric took the gaunt carpet to ETC and was playing the singles, so I think you're saying he played Alex Harrison one of the earliest rounds, and I think prior to the event, a lot of shit was talked about why his player was playing gaunt carpet. This bad list, and then Eric beat Alex Harrison, and Look, Sean Naden very soon afterwards like sat down and watched how this played. So look, credit to Sean, like someone who is willing to try and understand what the hell that is and go onwards. And I'm sure that Liam could have the same interaction about the whole joking about Nick Nanavati saying Meganobs are bad back in late 8th edition or whatever it was. And then Liam proving why it's good. And or what in his opinion was good, and look, I don't know if Nick ever took it on board or not, but that's a different question. And then look at this WTC.
That WTC was where the meme came. Where it was like, Eric is not good; he's just fast.
So there you go. And like, look, I'm sure a lot of shit talking happened in this WTC. I definitely saw it was why the hell are Australia taking Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights? They're bad. And, like, people obviously a lot of dumb shit. And then why the hell is Liam Hackett not running 20 Lich Guard? Why is he running 40 Warriors? And well, some things got proven. Like, look at it now, like how well Chaos Knight's doing, which Solly was running, and very few did run. And look, sometimes when you make mistakes, like you miss a thing. I know Brody Middleton talked about it on the recent, like, so there was a Down on 40k episode, which should be coming out soon with Dale about, look, maybe in hindsight they should have taken Custodes maybe over something else. And look, you make mistakes, right? But at least you're willing to accept them and eat a case of humble pie sometimes. And look, sometimes you shoot your shot and you miss sometimes, right?
Yeah,
and you play the better game and you miss. Like,
I know, for you do consultancy, and I know in my space, like in government, they always talk about innovation, right? And one of the things I always find so funny, and this is the 40k, taking it to real life. Most people don't actually know what innovation is or how to actually implement it. Innovation to me is about having an idea, testing the idea, not being afraid to fail, and in essence, even if it doesn't sound like or look like it's going to succeed, when it does succeed, back it. You know, like these are the things, like this is especially in government. It's like, if something doesn't sound like it should work, it probably won't get the support to be tried. And then even if it does try, if you can't sell it, it won't be continued. And it drives me nuts. Whereas in 40k world, you have an idea, it doesn't sound like it should work, but you test it. And if it does work, it's a secret sauce. It's actually, kept hidden, and it's part of your secret, lineup for your team, and you smash and you're going, ha, that's right. You know what I mean? It's actually celebrated that differences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think look, whole research and development programs are funded off trying to test things or try things out, and like not most things don't work, right? So I think you have to be accepting of trying things and failing, and then picking up the scraps again, like trying new engineering solutions or like computer solutions, right? Like there's so many gamers try and do things and they fail and they start again. Or look, yes, in government there's often things you have to, I guess, try out and like get support and stuff like that along the way. It's hard sometimes, right? Like, I know sometimes in projects where you have to take a lead or take a step, and look, you may fuck up legitimately. Like you may have not considered something and you're going to make a mistake, and it sucks sometimes eating a bit of humble pie when you mess up, but it's the best thing to do. Otherwise, you're going to be paralyzed by fear and you're never going to do anything. So
video games,
you got to balance.
Like, you've played tons of video games, like me too, and some of the best kind of tactics and exploration, etc. And not that I did a lot of speed running in my past, but even speedrunners, this is literally what they're doing. They're testing and seeing where the boundaries are, and testing ideas, and trying these kind of off the wall crazy things to push things in way, and they're celebrated. Like, it's like that testing and innovating of tactics, of strategies, of whatever you're trying to do. It's celebrated the process. It's celebrated the knowing that you're going to fail more often than not, and then when you actually succeed with some weird off the wall thing, that's also celebrated. That becomes in essence the mainstream.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Like, it's funny you mentioned speedrunning. So there's a famous popular YouTube channel called Summoning Salt, like summoning and then salt, like as in the ingredient, or how players get on the 40k table. And it does like a compilation of history of speedruns, so like the history of the Super Mario Brothers speedrun record, and it breaks it down how it evolves and changes over time. And I've thought, even though I would never do speedrunning because that just seems like the most so much time and effort put in for milliseconds of change, and it's incredible uncovering that. So, like people, I think that's to backtrack it to the topic of about what's that desire need for people. Like some speedrunners, they will dedicate their a year or 2 years at improving by a millisecond or a second on some video game, or trying to find that next glitch or that next improvement, and finding fractions of a second. It's incredible to look at, and it's fascinating. I know I find it interesting and something I can definitely appreciate. Or even in the hobby space, when you look at Golden Demon winners or people who win painting awards, and they tell you how many hours it took to paint this miniature, and the desire to go through that bullshit of glazing and blending to a perfection is incredible. And like, you got to reward those people when they take that step. And yeah, it's I think there's a lot of translation that comes from the 40k world into the real world, and understanding and improving, and like just testing theories and uncovering. I think another cool topic is also, funnily enough, especially around the teams event and stuff like that, is actual just social interaction and being a better person. Look, obviously, not everyone's an extrovert or likes organizing and stuff like that, but being in the 40k universe and organizing herding cats to fill out a pairing matrix, or try and organize logistics of accommodation and flights, really helps in the leading your team at work or whatever. Because if you're able to help people out and enjoy that social atmosphere, I personally feel that it creates a better bonding environment, and you're able to connect with people. And also just getting to know people about their hobbies and interests. Like, it's one thing to talk about work all the time, but getting to know your staff or people you work with behind the scenes and have established that connection is paramount in my experience. And you get to know that people better, and you work better alongside them.
I definitely think, and this is one of my points as well, the team camaraderie and actual true teamwork, I've experienced much stronger in 40k world than at my work. But there's been bleed overs in that I think I've been a better team leader, in essence, for my team, and I get closer with them than I would have traditionally done it, because I've seen and practiced, not just seen, you can practice it again in a kind of safe environment, the development of a team, be it as a leader or as part of a team, and getting that kind of where the barriers of true team camaraderie can go to. You know what I mean? Like where what correct barriers should be, and you know how close is too close versus to succeed at the highest level, even if it's just at work. How close should you get to? You know what I mean? Like I'm not necessarily explaining it the best, but I think I'm a better team leader and a team member outside of 40k because of the team's experience I've had inside the 40k.
Yeah, absolutely. And like dealing with different personalities and people who, I guess, motivation, right? Motivation works for different people, or they cooperate best with different techniques or ways of dealing with things. I mean, across teams I've worked with, you have some people who just don't say a word, or are very introverted and don't want to talk a lot, but you can sort of motivate them in different styles, or you can talk to them and like get them to do the thing one way, and whereas someone else you have to motivate or influence them in another way and get them and have different, I guess, bonding experiences, or drag them in. Like, I'm often the one to try and include. I know it sounds wankerish and very blowing smoke on my own ass, but I like to try and include people in conversations, because it's very easy to isolate someone. Like when you're around the table of four and like you three people are talking about one thing and there's one person left alone, I try and bring them in or try and relate the topic back to them so they can connect. And I think that's
not wankerish, man.
I think that makes me sound like yes, Sam, you're amazing. Wow, how cool are you? That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that
you are amazing, Sam.
Oh, shut up.
Make love to me, Randy. Have my babies.
Another South Park reference.
These are all South Park references.
Yes. Great show.
Yeah. One of the other big things I've had for 40k to real life, and I had a little bit. They're kind of cross referenced. They do bleed into each other, but it's thinking strategically. For the bigger vision, in essence, and setting up systems not just within a team, but across multiple different interest groups. I have a specific example because I've talked about it in the previous podcast, but the vision, right, and this is why vision setting is really, really important. So the vision for Australia, in essence, for the last 10 plus years, has to be do well in the global stage, right? So since we started going to ETC, WTC, it was to do well. That was always the vision. But the first few times, the first time I went to WTC or ETC, we didn't have a lot of the systems and structure in place that would get us there. The way teams were selected, the way support and fundraising, all the things that we've got right now, none of that was supported. And I started doing a lot of thinking after my first go to ETC. I started thinking about what are the things that we need in place to up Australia's capacity and capability, in essence, to actually play at the world stage. I developed the first Australia-wide FAQ, right? A lot of it was based off the WTC, but also the ITC, right? But I just wanted, and I got, in essence, through support with everyone, but I drove it a lot, that we're all playing the same game, right? The FAQ that almost every single tournament across Australia and New Zealand was using the same FAQ. that took like a year to get, but once it got in, it set the kind of scene, in essence, that for us to play at the top level, we all have to be playing the same game, so that we could actually start testing stuff together and we could travel interstate a lot more. They're bringing in support staff. So my year that I was captain in 2018, that was the first year that we had a coach come and a manager. So Sonia, my wife, she came along as well, and she was managing. She organised the shirts. She did a lot of the research for the flights, etc. When she was there, she was doing the food runs, etc. So we had 2 support staff, in essence, for the team. That was the first year we ever had that. And then fundraising as well. That kind of got started, and doing kind of events as part of that. These are systems that you need in place to achieve your vision and just to keep growing and growing and growing. And I was testing out and, in essence, doing these things in the 40k space at the same time I was doing these things at work, in essence. But I could test out, it took a year, but there's a whole bunch of different groups, different special interests, in essence, across Australia and New Zealand, especially for those committees, for like the FAQ and things like that, dealing with them, testing out different ideas about who's interested in what, so that you can understand a bit more, so that when you're at work and your team's trying to do something and there's another team doing something similar but in a completely different way, there's politics involved, how are you guys going to get on the same page? What's the vision? Setting that vision, getting the systems in place that you work together. These are 2 things that I think they really work well. And then, again, it being a hobby, that's not necessarily your main way of making bread for your family, in a sense. You can test some of these things that you would maybe be a bit more scared to do in real life when it's got a lot more risk involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it teaches you about laying the foundations and improving and implementing upon it. Like, you lay that initial foundation base, and you can improve upon there. Like we were talking about research and development, or making mistakes at the big early stages. Whether it's for example, you're talking about your initial ETC team, you knew this is not going to be the final product of an ETC team of where we have over 80 Australian players applying, and there's sponsorships and stuff like that. You're not trying to reach perfection on the first go. You're building upon it, and improving until what we have now today is a very good product, and it's going to be always improving. There's always more sponsorship, more applications, and there's something that the whole Australia WTC wants to strive towards, and you can translate to that to work very easily. Sorry to change topic a bit, but I want to flip it back a bit from learning from outside in the real world to 40k. And it was something that was quite interesting. So when I went to your house, Simon, for one of the practice days, one of the funniest things I found was after we played like 2 or 3 games of 40k, was everyone actually got around the table and they played Twilight Imperium, the board game. And I was actually quite curious, why do you sort of play those games, and why do you also in your, I guess, other free time play games like Hearthstone or various card games or chess games? Like, what do you get from that, and how does that translate to 40k for you?
Thank you. That is the most smoothest segue known to mankind. And again, you're awesome, and you should feel proud.
It's be like the sister act. I was at the sister act, like we're all positive speech and endearments and stuff like that. Like, Simon, you're amazing. You're beautiful. You're caring. And
it's only because I know you haven't, been in the military, but I should just say, thank you for your service.
Absolutely. And anyone else listening, you're beautiful as well.
Exactly. So
thank you for listening.
Other board games I've tested, because in 40k world I'm more of an aggressive player than in general. I've trained myself. I can be a bit more passive, but it's not my natural state, and so I get to test the kind of that aggression, so to speak, in other games, like things like Twilight Imperium. It's fun just nuking yourself on other people, and even if you lose, it doesn't make a difference. It's the journey, the experience, but it does let you test out ideas, and this is how I test a lot of my lists. In essence, it's like, all right, I'm doing full send. How aggressive can I get away with, in essence? And then when you get rebuffed, you pull it back, and you kind of pull it back until you work out, okay, this is how aggressive I can get, but to be successful, you kind of got to dial it back a little bit. Sometimes full send is the only way, like World Eaters, etc. But so other board games lets me test that kind of aggression, but also other games lets me test different paths of victory. So Twilight Imperium is a fantastic example of that, because people can win being super passive. And there's a whole, I think it's Space Cat's Turtle, I don't know, something like that. He's got a YouTube channel that he streams Twilight Imperium, and he plays different factions. He plays so many games, but he plays different factions, and he plays them in different ways as well. The other thing I love about other games, and chess is a perfect example of this, where I play competitive chess. Eric did as well. Lots of other people from 40k used to play competitive chess, and they've kind of moved in, which is having things where you're having states that you have to kind of see where the path to victory is. So those chess problems where you're like, it's white to move, mate in 3, and you got to try and work out how to achieve that. That happens in 40k all the time. And if you watch the War Games Live WTC coverage, right? Jack Harpster, I think it was the one, or it was John Lennon, one of the two. They were doing this. No, I think it was Jack, because he would actually have 2 decks. He would have a deck that he's pulling from for his cards, and then he would have a spare deck in front of him, so he knows what's left in the deck. And so he would say to himself, "Okay, cool. To win this game, or to push for the 15 or whatever, I need to, within the next 2 turns, draw, say, capture any outpost. How likely is that? Do I have any units set up so I can actually achieve that?" And then if you know that you need to achieve that, then you start moving assets, pieces, in essence, if you're in chess, to mate in 3, to achieve that thing. I noticed myself do that quite often. I did it 2 games ago. I set up where I said, I reckon next turn, in the next 2 cards, I'm going to draw... it's theoretically next 3 cards, because I can spend a CP to drop one. I'm going to draw capture any outpost. If I do, I flip this loss to a win. It's a small win, but I can flip this game. And so I set 2 gargoyle units up, and you have to have an army that can actually do it. But I set up 2 gargoyle units about 20 plus inches away from him. I started targeting the unit that was camping the objective, and lo and behold, I had to spend the CP, but I got it, and I got a small win. And that's an example of that. Like, that's an example of where you're setting up a path to victory, and you're setting up situations, or in RTS worlds, like, traps and things like that, where it's unlikely to happen, but if it does happen, you get the win.
Yeah, I think, and like planning for that future per se, or like setting yourself up for success, right? Like I know the exact game you're talking about with Jack's Hearthstone played Matt Robertson, so it was USA versus England, and he literally had the cards laid out, and he said, look, I can draw this, or this. What happens if I draw this? How do I score this? And how do I get these points? And this is something like I legitimately want to do. Is on my score sheet is I've already drafted up is have the secondaries laid out, but I want to also have the percentage odds of like 1 out of 16, 1 out of 15, and have them laid out so I know what are the chances of me drawing said card, and I can cross them off one at a time. Like, yes, I can use the Goonhammer Tabletop Battles app, and like that tracks things well, or like how things are going to happen. But seeing it in person and being able to physically track things out and know where your win conditions are is a great thing. And I think
this is why I still use the paper. I still use the paper exactly for that reason, because I put a line next to what things were drawn. If it was scored, it was thrown in a bin, etc. You've seen me. Like I still use the paper because I get to see what other cards are still left.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's completely fair, and a great way just to tabletop aid to help you out, and like be think smarter, not harder, right? Like play smarter, not harder per se.
And then what you just said there as well, that links to Hearthstone and other card games. But Hearthstone, if you've got 6 cards left in your deck, and there's an out in one of the cards, or you've got like a discover card, or a randomly generate 1 card, and you're completely fucked unless you get 2 points damage, and you're thinking to yourself, like, how am I going to get that? Is cycling through and drawing one of your cards going to be useful, or throwing a discover card and trying to get that one thing that lets you do it? You know what I mean? Like you'll get situations where there's lethal on the board, so to speak. This is Hearthstone speak, and it's like, there's not lethal on the board, but there's lethal that you can get through a long shot generation, so to speak. Those percentages of drawing that particular card or getting this situation. If only I roll a 6 here, if I roll that 6, I get the win. Do I go for it? Oh, that's a 17% chance. All right, cool. Well, do I go for that versus I hold and I get a small win? And Teams is perfect for this, but you get the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, like, those 2 games, they're different sorts of games. So Warhammer 40,000 is a game of perfect information in the sense of, you can ask your opponent every single rule and every single strat and know every single outcome of what can happen. There's no hidden information on the sense of, like, there's nothing that you don't know about, other than obviously the result of a dice roll per se. How far things move, how far things shoot, etc. Whereas a card game like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering or poker is a game of hidden information, in the sense of you have your it's limited information, hidden or limited, one of the two. But you know what your results are, but you have no idea what your opponents are doing. But as you get better with those games, and it sort of translates to 40k, is you pick up on play patterns, or you can recognize things. So very famous, like Magic the Gathering player, oh my gosh, Louis Scott Vargas, LSV. So Louis Scott Vargas, there's always a funny saying of, like, as soon as someone plays a card, Louis Scott Vargas can easily recognize what deck it is and what other cards may be in it and stuff like that, and quickly recognize what things are, what the meta is and stuff like that. So all being said, I think other games like board games and stuff like that, it tests that brain and puts you in different situations to configure things out and know your win condition. And look, obviously it's fun to sort of socialize and stuff like that in a different medium. I used to play Magic the Gathering Commander quite a bit, and I enjoyed that process of, like, thinking through different win paths or win conditions and setting yourself up for success in a different multitude of ways, and seeing how other people try and do it, and playing, I guess, that poker face-esque style of Inhuman, maybe talking shit along the way, or being all like stone-faced killer and not saying anything. It's all mind games, right? Sometimes, and yeah, I think so.
And, well, that's what the new cards, like the tactical deck, is what you said about 40k is correct. You know, you have perfect information, but the tactical deck, in essence, introduces that imperfect information, because you don't know exactly. You know what cards you've got left in your deck, but you don't know exactly what's going to come up next. And same goes for your opponent. You know what I mean? And so you're trying to defend, so like you see in battle reports and things like that. It's like, I'm purposely not going to be on this objective just in case you draw these next 3 cards. You know, there's 3 cards that, you know, overwhelming force, or, you know, storm hostile objective and things like that, right? So you do things just in case your opponent draws that card, but you have no idea if he's going to draw that card, and it's random. That's imperfect information. Like, I'm going to, you know, hold this deck in case you draw that second ace. You know, like, it's like that poker element.
Yeah, absolutely. You set yourself up for success, right? And like, look, sometimes things happen. Like, those random elements don't go your way. The flop in poker doesn't go the way you did, but you made the best decision with the information you got. And look, some luck's involved sometimes, but generally the best players are people who know how to play the game, who have practiced and stuff like that. They win more often than not. So when you talking about a 40k example, staying off the objective in case someone draws like overwhelming force or storm hostile objective, making sure units can end within 9 inches of a table quarter for investigate signals and do the action per se, or deploy teleport homes and stuff like that. So
yeah, I guess that's why reactive. Sorry, it's why reactive moves are so strong. I was just thinking about it, like, it just triggers because, you know, termagants, for example, or gargoyles, or we'll say termagants, right? They don't have to end on the objective, but if someone doesn't draw storm hostile objective and then they move anywhere near you, you then just jump onto the objective. Whereas if they do, absolutely, then you just block it off completely. You know.
I think that's why also, like, well, we all don't need to understand why Phantasm was so strong on a release, or why.
Yeah.
But like that. So when you told someone like why people argue Phantasm is one of the strongest stratagems to ever be printed in the game of Warhammer 40k, and you told that to a new person, they're like, it doesn't kill anything or anything. It's like, no, it just allows you to move. And the big thing is that you have more information, and it plays mind games in your opponent, right? You're able to, with perfect information of where your opponent is, what they potentially can shoot, or what their charge ranges and stuff are, you can make a move and adjust your philosophy.
It's the same. It's why I said in the 3 Wraith Knight list that I ran right back in July, and then I pointed to Yakan and I said, "This is the most oppressive thing in this list."
Oh, it's crazy. The Yakan is so good. It's like unbelievable. You have to as I played actually, funnily enough, against it earlier this week, and it's incredible how much brain power it consumed of me trying to set it up so I could kill it, and because it just dictated the game so much. And until it was destroyed, then I could focus on the other elements of Eldar.
Anyway, you were saying you know, you're getting into, it's like I interrupted you. So what were you saying before?
Okay. Phantasm. Oh, the other one I was another. I definitely need to get better at is setting myself up for success. I got called out, so like on a TTS game, I was like playing, I was thinking things out, and then David Truman rapid ingressed some custodes and behind a ruin. I went, fuck, that's the game, because I didn't consider that possibility, and it's setting up for success. So that's like another thing that's reactive and quite strong, and you have to set yourselves up sometime in those sort of things. And games like Hearthstone or Marvel Snap is actually finally one, another card game which I played, and you set yourself up for success and you sort of predict things in advance. So you play things in a certain location and hope things go your way, or they don't, and yeah.
All right, well, look, I've gone through my list. I know there's a couple of things in your list that you wanted to talk about. Do you want to go through them and just tell us kind of other things that people could be learning, either in 40k for the real world, or for the real world that can be brought into 40k?
Yeah, sure. So I think a big one that I think just a big fundamental one, so for people listening, is actually there's a good book called Playing to Win by David Serlin, and it's a competitive book. It breaks down from like a video game perspective and a card game perspective, play styles and play philosophies and stuff like that. And I think that's a good learning resource or book material. That's not 40k specific, but sets you up for success, and there's a good learning material in book.
It's not a very long read as well. I've read it twice, and I think it's freely accessible. I think he posted it as a PDF.
Yeah, it's online, and it's definitely easily accessible.
It's maybe almost 20 years old. I remember reading it at uni.
Not too funny.
So like, the first time I read it was back 20 years ago, and then I read it again probably in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's definitely available online. Like, so if you look at Playing to Win, you'll be able to find it. It's a bunch of good articles, and it breaks things down on what he believes. And I found it very useful for me. So
yeah. So in the thing since the year 2000. So I knew it was like I read it when I was at uni, and I went to uni around 2000.
Yeah, another thing I think I find interesting is, like, obviously in 40k we have play styles and play philosophies, and it's something that's always I'm intrigued about as well in the real world. How, I guess, famous people do what they do and the way they approach things. So I'm sort of relate things to music. So I can't remember where it was from, but it's interesting to me, and this relates to 40k of like different approaches to things. Is there's a famous rapper called Jay-Z, and so when an artist writes a song, there's a multitude of ways they could do it. Do they do the drums first? Do they do the guitar riff first, or do they do the vocals first? And it's interesting, like, hearing how different music artists do their own thing, and it was always intriguing to me to hear someone who's naturally gifted. Like, so suppose according to allegedly Jay-Z, what he does is he listens to a beat and like goes for it and humming, and after like an hour or so, he has his song smack bang, like first take in the studio there and then. Whereas others would have to maybe listen to the beat or write things down, then go back and forth and like edit. And it's interesting to me hearing how different people approach things, and maybe some approach that someone else has taken. You can learn from it and reciprocate, or you could try it out and it's maybe not for you. And I think it's intriguing to look to other resources and leadership skills or things that people do and reciprocate them. One thing I like to do, like, I generally try and be a calm, collective human being. But there's some famous NFL athletes. So Earl Thomas II and Clay Matthews, who are famous NFL stars. So I'll relate this back to 40k. But when they play their sport, they are absolutely dead serious. And like in practice and training, they're the most cutthroat human beings ever. They're going 110% every single time. If you've seen the Netflix documentary series of Swamp King, so it's talked about the Florida Gators, but like head coach training philosophy of just being brutal all the way through. And it got them success, and it's one approach of doing things. And I know I tried to do such a similar thing, and I just hated it. It just didn't connect with me, but that's fine. I tried it out, I learned from it, and I moved on. And I found a philosophy or way of approaching the game or approaching my own personal life that works for me. So I think going outside the comfort zone of maybe your Art of War or Vanguard Tactics or Stat Check video and trying to learn from somewhere else is beneficial, not for the 40k sense, but also from a real life sense. That's what I personally do. And look, maybe everyone, but that's for me. I find that
what you just said, that resonates with me, because I almost everyone I play against, I try to give them a proper game, right? Like I don't play easy, so to speak, just because you're new or whatever. Like I say, I'm testing out my ideas, and you're testing out your ideas. And if I pull punches, and let's say you win, you're going to leave, my house or, this table thinking your list is hot shit. And that's not fair on you. And it's not me not showing you respect and not showing myself respect, in essence. I approach almost every training game with the same level of, we'll say, seriousness as a normal game. And it's not to say overly serious, but it's still, I'm not going to just fuck about. Now, I won't, in practice games, I won't, go the full 5 turns and call every single element, etc., etc. I will, in practice games, we might just play one round, and it's like, all right, cool, that idea didn't work, let's throw it in the bin. But I'm not going to, play sloppily in practice games just because, it's not fair or respectful, in my opinion.
No, that's fair. And like, also, I think if you don't do that, you may have regrets. It's like, oh, I could have won the game if I did this, but well, you didn't. You lost. Good job, you, man. Like, yeah, cool. Like, you can always give yourself a caveat or a way out. It's a way to always gratifying yourself and finding, I don't know, an excuse for why you lost, and that's not the reason you should do it. You should always give your best effort, and you learn from it. Otherwise, because there's often learning opportunities by putting your best foot forward and best effort, you can learn from it. And I think that's also like a caveat is like everyone's intent is to win, right? Like everyone wants to win, and I think that's also another topic for another day. Is like playing by intent and where the line is drawn. Of look, everyone wants to play to win, and my intent is to win. But like, how do you balance that between not making mistakes or learning from your mistakes as well?
And what you just said as well, it links to that. That's my sorry. I'm just going to pause. My apologies if I keep on saying, and that's what you just said, or that what you just said is going to link to something I'm about to say. It's my little habit or tweak. I'm gonna. It's my in essence.
All good.
The intent conversation, not just about what type of game you're going to have, but also about what you're trying to achieve, and like the almost excessive communication. I know when I was first starting, I didn't talk as much about what I was trying to achieve. I lived in my head a bit. And then as I communicated more, not just normal shit chatting, but also saying what I'm trying to achieve, what my overall game plan is, not giving too much information, but giving enough information so they can follow along with what I'm trying to achieve, and then tell me if I can't achieve that. But it also gives them, and this is something you'll notice in WTC world, if there is something that's going to spoil my plan, in essence, because there's a stratagem I don't know, for example, or a reactive move on a data sheet that I don't know about, I can kind of, through my conversation, explore that. And you don't have to, but it's encouraged in WTC world for your opponent to tell you. So like you say, I'm going to move this unit here, and there's no outside of 6 inches, and there's no heroic intervention, and nothing here can reactive move. And like, I'm saying what my plan is, and I'm saying what I assume. I'm overly communicating. And then if you know that what I just said was wrong because there's an attached character that lets you do something, you need to say it, in essence. Like, that's a WTC expectation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you didn't talk like that, if you didn't, say what your intent was, if you weren't communicating, then when you move up there, thinking that's what was going to happen, and then they heroic into you, and they go, oh shit, I didn't know that, and then you start asking for takebacks and all that type of stuff, it's now just a big schmozzle.
Yeah, absolutely. Literally happened this week, and it's something I need to well is actually declaring its intent or what I'm trying to do. Look, I try to line up some carnifexes to shoot something, and I literally hadn't lined up the carnifexes as an option to shoot this other option. And when I went to do so, the guy's like, "You haven't lined them up," and I went, "Oh, my intent was to do it, but I never declared it at all at any point in time." Mm-hmm. And I just had to eat my I just cop it, right? Like, I never
humble pie.
Eat the humble pie, and like, look, I fucked up, and I think, look, you could go around about saying, "Oh, look, I meant to do it, but I didn't." But look, at the end of the day, like, you didn't fucking declare it, then just take it on the chin and walk off. And I think to sort of iterate to another, like, in the real world to 40k, it's something all professional athletes deal with is judge calls or referee calls. Like, referees and judges and human beings are human beings, right? They make mistakes, and something that I sort of learned, and sort of my approach is with umpires and referees, is as soon as they make a call, just accept it and move on. Because, look, you could argue back and forth saying, "Oh, you're wrong, you're a piece of shit, why are you doing this, this and that?" But what does it do? It rarely affects the outcome. They're not going to, a good referee isn't going to just change his mind there and then. It's like, "Oh, I'm not going to give you a yellow card now because you back talk to me." Most people will, like, it'll just make things worse, right? That you take the judge call, you cop it, and then you move onwards, and then maybe afterwards try and have the discussion more calmly or in the appropriate setting. Unless, like, obviously there's a good setting as to why you can do such a thing. It's too often sometimes, I think, in 40k, some people, they hear a judge call or something like this, and they say, "No, you're an idiot, blah, 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 blah," and they just don't cop it. Like, it is what it is, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, I know I've had those type of situations before.
Yeah,
and you've just had to. It's. I think the last time it affected me that strongly, that was like 10 plus years ago. I created the Australian New Zealand FAQ. I just remember going one weekend, coming to an event in Brisbane. Next weekend, I went to an event in Gold Coast, and they were playing completely different rules. Same army, completely different rules. And I just got so pissed off. I said, nah, we're all going to play the same fucking game.
So, yeah.
That was a year-long journey because I got pissed off.
Too good. Well, now, at least now, Australia-wide, we generally do use the WTC FAQ, which is great, and I think as a positive look forward. And look, if they fuck up along the way and they decide making some bad decisions, then we can have that conversation of maybe looking for a frontline gaming FAQ or only GW FAQ or UKTC that's got a FAQ, or establish our own body and I don't know, work it out. So, but hopefully that day doesn't come when you can all be unified and live in a utopian world. Ideally, right? Maybe.
I was going to say, like, what do you define as utopia? I like having differences. It gets boring if everyone's the same. There's been elements of 40k when the meta has, in essence, been solved, and the best armies, or at least the best armies of a faction, has been like. There's not 7 armies in Tyranids. There's only one way you can run Tyranids, and of them, you know, a team is going to be, if you have a team of 8, well, you've got 6 armies that you have to pick, and then there's 2 flex in essence. And like, I don't know, it does get a little bit boring. And if you could consider that utopia because it's perfect information and the game has been solved, I don't know.
No, I think that's pretty fair. That's a good conversation. I think there's probably all things to unravel there, but I think Warhammer is going down the esport route of having seasons or periods of changing things up to make it more spicy. But I guess maybe could you ask why chess is a game that's been established for years and years and years, has mostly the same rule set. People still find that interesting, and maybe because the game has so much depth to it that people find it interesting and fascinating, or I don't know. Who knows? That's another deep dive, a philosophical question. I think, but in 40k, I think that's fair. I think I like people being on the same page for like maybe having a set standard of things, or look, there's adopt that initial body of work, or have that premium standard of like the WTC ruins, the WTC FAQ for events, and then. Like maybe I'm too young and naive that I know maybe after a year or two of every single event in Australia is the same of WTC FAQ, WTC map, it gets boring, and if the meta stays the same. So
yeah, what I like about Europe is special in essence, and for any European listeners, yes, you're special. All right, but Europe is special in that they have distinct flavors in essence across it.
Sure,
and I really like how WTC and LGT, so London GT, they're like a month apart, and they have their not completely different, but they're playing the same game but in a different way. The terrain set is different. The rulings are not exactly the same. So the LGT don't just take WTC and say that's our rulings. They make changes to it, which actually drives changes to WTC, as has been seen recently. And because of the terrain in essence that they use, the meta is different in essence. Do you know what I mean? I guess it's a singles versus teams, but the terrain set means that different types of armies and different types of playstyles are encouraged. And I'll draw some analogies outside of 40k. I'm not a big tennis player. But Justin, one of my friends, shout out Justin if you ever do listen to this, but he loves tennis. He follows it like it's his religion. And there's a whole meta of, clay versus grass versus concrete. And you know what I mean? There are some players that are just stronger on certain types of, courts. And also, certain types of, temperatures and things like that. Like they play better when it's summer and during the heat, etc. And so certain tournaments, they seem to absolutely dominate because they're really good on the grass in the heat. And so whatever tournament happens to be that in one of the big, tournaments, or Grand Slams or whatever, they smash it every year for like 10 years straight. And that's kind of what... I think that's actually healthy. That's what I'm trying to get at. I think it's healthy that we don't just have a unified rule set and terrain set and all the type of stuff, because then people who are strong on a certain type of playstyle or a certain type of army never get to shine. And yeah, I like that. I like that as an idea.
Well, that's just your opinion, man. To quote the Big Lebowski, but no, I think I respect pretty fair, and it's an interesting question. I think maybe for me, I'm quite new and naive in the journey, and I want to just play the one thing and get better at it. And maybe as I mature and understand more of the game, I will appreciate different formats and different philosophies. I think during 9th edition, when we had player place terrain versus WTC versus UKTC, and like shit was bad for some people with player place terrain, I would argue you have to raise the bar, raise the standard, but that's maybe a different question rather than having different formats and different metas.
Look, I'm not a big fan of player place, and I think that introduces a different thing because it's a metagame within the metagame. The LGT versus WTC, they're both designed tables. Do you know what I mean? It's like a player place terrain is like I'll do controversial here. It's like the Indian cricket pitch, where it's like how many holes can we introduce without without getting in trouble from the ICC. So yes, for any Indian listeners, that was a joke.
I think like it's interesting as well, like in the Formula One, or racing cars, or racing, like with every single racing track is different and it's different climates, or it suits different drivers because the meta of Formula One is different, and like as the season progresses, like different cars suit different tracks as things improve or change. So instead of like except for NASCAR, right? I mean, maybe the temperature changes, but they still drive in the same loop. Maybe I'm probably being very ignorant. I'm sure like one loop is longer than the other, but look, maybe
but that's a great example. No, that is a really great example. So NASCAR as just a I don't want to dismiss it, but going around in circles where the rule set's in essence the same, but now you're just trying to eke out the best in essence from stamina and from performance and things like that. That is a legitimate way, and there are people who absolutely enjoy it and people who love taking part in that. But then being able to go into these kind of different, if you go to Bathurst or something like that, or just you go into these different types of courses with different types of cars, or you get the idea. It's being able to be flexible enough and agile enough in your thinking and your practicing, your preparation. I think there's something there. I haven't explored this fully. Like I'm literally talking to you, and these things are coming into my head. But I like that as an idea, as I said.
Yeah, I think to reiterate, maybe it's something why I don't like it is speedrunning again. Like if you're playing an old school Super Mario Brothers game, it's the exact same level from it. It never changes, and there's no updates or changes to the game generally. But speedrunners still try and eke out the perfection or try and improve on there's limited variables, right? It's the same thing. It's just you as a human being trying to improve and against the set parameters. I don't know. I mean, it's something to look into, and yeah.
Awesome, mate. Look, you have now broken the record of the longest. Like, it's not the longest podcast for anyone ever done, but the longest one here at Ethos. So, thank you very much for the chat. It was fantastic. Was there anything else you want to wrap up, or any shout outs, or anything else you want to talk about?
No, this was great. Thank you very much, Simon, for this. I feel like we had the Simon Gojkovic experience instead of the Joe Rogan experience, and we quoted a whole bunch of Joe Rogan guests. Really good. It was a good open chat. And for anyone who is interested in listening to myself, I do my own show called The Wide World of Warhammer. Any support is greatly appreciated. Or if you see me at an event, just say hi. Always willing to have a game on TTS or in real life for sure. So yeah, and just thank you, Simon. I really, really appreciate you inviting me on the show. I listen to it all the time as part of that growth mindset, trying to always listen and learn from someone else, both on the tabletop and away from it at the painting desk. I know listening to Hayden Waldock and other Ethos members improve their painting. I'm trying to understand what the hell they do and improve myself, because look, it's try and understand why someone does one thing versus another and try them and then see if it works or it doesn't work with you. So yeah, thank you very much, and hope someone learned something from this, at least one thing. All right.
Well, look, I learned a bunch about American football, so that was good.
There we go. We'll watch the Super Bowl party one day, and then maybe I'll deeply dive into it. And it's funny how I was a little tangent. It's funny. There's like a weird correlation between people who played American football and played war games, and I think it's just that strategy and tactics behind the game translate very well to the tabletop. And it's funny. It was like almost like 50% of people who I played American football with in Canberra did a war game of sorts, like they played Blood Bowl or historicals and stuff like that. It was a weird correlation. It's funny.
Well, I play Blood Bowl. I enjoy it, and so anyone who's played Blood Bowl, you can get behind NFL. It's just less, what they call the steamrollers from random things, and probably less bribery to the refs.
Well, it depends how ethical you want to be, right?
That's right. All right, buddy. Thanks a lot, and I'll catch you later.